If everything goes according to plan, you'll be seeing this on November 15th, which is the day after my birthday, which means that I am a Scorpio. Well, hello there, welcome back. Today I am here with something that's a bit different from what I usually do. My birthday is November 14th. I am officially 24 years old now, which is wild. And if you know anything about astrology, then chances are that from hearing the date of my birthday, you've already realized that I am a Scorpio. I actually have both a Scorpio Sun and a Scorpio Mercury, and so does my boyfriend, funnily enough. We have the same Sun, the same Mercury, and the same Venus, which is in Libra, which is just wild to me. But anyway, that's besides the point. Earlier this year, Heather over at Aphrodite Reads did a series of vlogs dedicated to Leo season. And in one of those vlogs, she read books that were written by Leo authors. And I just thought the idea was so interesting. And I thought, could be fun to do a Scorpio one. I'm gonna link the entire series down below so you can check it out for yourself. I highly recommend it. The vlogs are amazing. But yeah, this was definitely inspired by Heather, and I am going to read 4 books by Scorpio authors. I don't really have a goal with this. Like, this is just something gimmicky and fun for me to celebrate my birthday with you. And yeah, one thing that I want to try to do though is see if I can recognize any Scorpio themes in each of these books, any Scorpio vibes, if you will. Astrology is actually a lot more than just I'm a Scorpio or I'm a Leo or whatever your sign is. That's actually just your sun sign. You know, you have an entire chart with different houses and planets and degrees that all come together to influence you and make you who you are. If you don't believe in astrology, that's completely fine, of course, but you know, just be respectful of people who do. I personally really believe in it, but I don't see it as something super strict. You know, I don't see it as something that premeditates my entire life and all my behaviors, you know, and gives me no choice. I see it more as a tool to better understand myself and others, and to better understand things that I need to work on myself. The Scorpio sign is ruled by Pluto, and Pluto is the god of the underworld and the dead. And death is a recurring thing in the life of a Scorpio, not necessarily in the sense of people actually dying, but more so in the sense of rebirth and regeneration and new life. Scorpios are very intense and are oftentimes very connected and drawn to the occult and the spiritual and death and dark things. And they are also very resilient. The symbol most commonly associated with Scorpios is the scorpion, which is an animal that has a very thick shell to protect its insides, but it's also very deadly. You know, it's called very deadly poison or venom. I never know the difference between poison and venom, but you got the gist. You know, a thick outside to protect the soft inside, as well as very deadly venom / poison. Common things associated with the Scorpio sign are manipulation, sex, being secretive, being very emotional even though you don't necessarily show it, fierce loyalty, connection to the other side / the occult, holding grudges, and resilience and independence. Okay, it's a lot more complex than that, and I highly recommend you read a bit more into it. And I'm gonna link a couple videos down below about the Scorpio sign so you can watch it if you're interested. Wow, it's getting pretty dark pretty fast, which is fitting, I guess. It was a bit hard to come up with this list because it's surprisingly difficult to come across authors' birthdays on the internet, but I did manage to find a few of them, and I tried to narrow it down to books that I already own too, so that's that. I'm sorry for the noise of the rain, by the way. The books that I ended up choosing were The Blueprint by Holly Black. This follows Jude, a human girl trying to survive in the world of Fae while trying to acquire power for herself. Then there's The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. This follows 2 teenagers who decide to compete in the Scorpio Races, a race that takes place every November where men ride water horses, a vicious breed of horse that lives under the sea. Then there's Vampire Academy by Richelle Mead. The only thing that I know about this is that it follows 2 teenage girls who are best friends, and the 2 of them are vampires in this Vampire Academy. And finally, there's The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This tells the story of a little living boy called Nobody Owens, who is raised by a bunch of ghosts in a graveyard. The Graveyard Book is a middle grade, and the other 3 are young adults. But yeah, without any further ado, let's just get into it. Okay, so I'm 50% into The Blueprint by Holly Black, and in a surprising turn of events, I'm actually really enjoying this. I don't know either. And the reason why this is so surprising to me is because I don't really like the whole Fae thing. At least I thought I didn't. But I was thinking about it and I realised that I actually only ever read one book series that had Fae in it, and it was the Throne of Glass series, and I didn't even finish it. And the whole thing with that series is that I didn't really like the direction it was taken. So it wasn't necessarily the Fae's fault, although they were involved in what I wasn't liking about this series at the moment. I don't know, but yeah, I'm really enjoying this, and I think most of my enjoyment has to do with Jude as a main character. I love Jude, okay? And I love how she's moved by anger and wounded pride and ambition, and I also love how unapologetically power hungry she is. And I think that's quite refreshing to read in general, but it's even more so considering that I just recently finished reading the Grisha trilogy, and Alina was just constantly punished for her ambition and was constantly told that her ambition was wrong, and that really frustrated me. So, you know, Jude is a nice change of scenario, I guess you could say. But anyway, that's beside the point. So Jude lives in Ferry. Ferry is the name of the land. She lives in Ferry with her family, which is complicated. I don't really know how to explain this. How do you explain her family? Basically, Jude has a twin sister called Taryn, and the two of them are fully human. And they also have an older half-sister who is part Fae. They have different fathers. And the book opens up, this is no spoiler by the way, it's literally the first scene in the book. It opens up with this Fae general coming to the house when they are super young, like Taryn and Jude are 6 or 7, I think. But yeah, this Fae general gets to the house and murders both their parents, you know, because their mother used to be his wife, and she faked her own death while she was pregnant with the older sister in order to escape this general, because this is so hard. She wanted to escape him because life in Fae is very hard for human beings, because the Fae really despise human beings, you know, so she wanted to escape that. And she knew Jude's father, who's also human, from there. Like, the two met in Fae and they escaped into the human world. Am I making any sense? I hope so. And so the general got to the house because he finally, after years and years, found out that the mother was actually still alive, and so was his daughter. And so he found them and he murdered them out of revenge, honor, some bullshit like that. And then he takes not only Vivi, who is his child, back to Ferry with him, but also Jude and Taryn, who are, you know, fully human and not biologically his children at all, because the Fae's customs kind of dictate that you have to care for your spouse's children. And so he does it, you know, he brings all 3 of them back to Ferry with him and raises the 3 of them. And then a few years later he also remarried, and he had a child with his new wife, you know, a little boy. And so all of them make up this very what's it called, dysfunctional family that is very interesting to read about. I know all of that sounds very weird, but what I gather from reading this book is that the Fae are just completely different from humans, so it really doesn't make any sense for us to expect them to behave the same, or to feel the same, or to have the same customs and traditions and moral code as a human being. They are inherently meaner and more cunning and angrier, and they are immortal beings, so like, that prompts them to give a shit about very different things from us, you know, mere mortals. I'm loving all of the lore surrounding the Fae and all of the moral ambiguity that they possess. Like, that's my shit. And I'm really loving everything about Jude and, you know, about her family and all the different dynamics of this very dysfunctional family. Jude and Taryn were super young when they were brought to Ferry, as I said before, and so they spend most of their lives there, and so they see Ferry as their own world rather than the human world. It's very hard because at the same time they see Ferry as their home and their world, they also are fully human, and the Fae really look down on humans and they really despise humans, and they think they are above above. Why did I say that so weird? They think they are above humans. And so, yes, fairy is their home and their world, but they are also not really a part of it. So much of the story is about Jude and Taryn trying to find a place for themselves in that world. And they go about it in very different ways. Like Taryn is more the kind of person who just wants to disappear into the background. Like she just wants to go unnoticed and live a comfortable life, you know, while Jude wants revenge and respect and power. Well, the oldest sister, who's the general's biological daughter, she had spent a lot of time in the human world already, and so she saw the human world as her own. Although she is part Fae and the Fae world is technically her world, she sees the human world as her home. And so it's very nice to see the contrast between her name is Vivi, by the way, between Vivi and Taryn and Jude. And I also find it very interesting that Jude and Taryn found a way to love the general. What's his name? I think it's Maddock. Because as time went on, they kind of saw that the inner workings of the Fae mind are very different from humans. And they kind of started understanding the Fae a bit more. And they understand that the morality of the Fae is very different from that of the humans. I just find it fascinating. And at the end of the day, he raised them. So they see him as a father figure. Vivi doesn't, because she was already older when she was brought to Fairy. So it's different for her, you know. But the girls were like 6. So, you know, Maddock was the only father that they really remember in a way. And I really like how, despite the 3 sisters being completely different from each other, they also really love each other. And yeah, it's just, I love all the different family dynamics that are included in this one family. I don't think this is a spoiler, but it might be, so I'm gonna put the word on the screen and you can skip ahead. Jude becomes a spy early on in the book, and I love that for her. You know, I am loving to read about the Court of Shadows, I think they call it, and you know, all of the other spies and the training and the things that she learns. I'm really digging that. That caught me by surprise. I didn't know there was gonna be any spy work involved in this book. But there is, and I'm really digging it. As for negatives, every now and then there are names of different magical creatures, you know, other than the Fae, written on the page, but there's not really any explanation on what they are or what they look like or what they do. I'm assuming these magical creatures actually exist in our world, like in a certain type of mythology or law or something like that, but I never heard of them. And so I come across these names on the page, and I'm kind of waiting for Holly Black to describe the creature or to tell me what this creature is, and she never does. So I'm just left there very confused for a second and wondering, am I supposed to know what that is? But all of that is very inconsequential to the story, so it doesn't really hinder my enjoyment of the book at all. Also, every now and then there are a few things that are so ludicrous and, you know, just too weird and silly for my taste. Like, there was this one bit where Jude rode a giant toad. You know, like you ride a horse. She rode a giant toad. That's a bit much for me. Like, the imagery of it is just so silly. I don't know how I'm supposed to take it seriously. Like, I was reading it and it was kind of a serious moment, and I was just laughing, imagining a giant toad. I'm sorry, I can't. Also, to be completely honest with you, I don't really care about Carden all that much so far, but I also feel like the romance isn't really gonna happen in this book. You know, I feel like Holly Black has more of a long-term plan for Carden as a character, but also for Jude and Carden as a couple. And so, I don't know, I'm intrigued. I want to see where. I just zoned out here. But I'm intrigued, you know, I want to see how Holly Black is gonna write Carden and what's gonna become of him, and yeah. I'm very curious. Put a hat in my head and call me Boo Boo the Fool, because I feel like a fucking clown. Perhaps Fae do deserve rights after all. Who would have thought? I finished reading The Pearl Prince by Holly Black, and I loved it. I had so much fun with it, and even though I saw some of the twists coming, I really didn't mind it at all because I had a blast following Jude along in her journey. And speaking of Jude, I have no choice but to stand. She is everything I wanted and more. She is so clever and so cunning, and like, she makes some dumb mistakes every now and then, but she actually learns from them and she doesn't repeat them. And I love seeing her get smarter and more strategic as the books went on, and I love seeing her kind of learning how to play the court game better, as well as trying to find ways to get power. Taryn can choke. She's a fucking bitch. I'm not gonna get into details because spoilers, but oh my fucking god, I hate her. Like, I saw it coming and I knew it was gonna happen and I still hate her. That's all I'm gonna say on her, okay? She can choke. That's it. As for Carden, first of all, I cannot believe that Yoren joking when you said this motherfucker had a tail. A fucking tail. I hated it, and Jude's description of it was this disgusting! But anyway, I still don't care about him a whole lot, to be quite honest with you, but I am intrigued, and I think that's what the book was going for. It just really felt like the book was only planting the seeds for Carden's character and also his romance with Jude. Like, I feel like Holly Black was just going for the long term, if that makes sense. And, you know, I gotta say, there's some flavor there. I'm sorry, but there's just something about characters who hate each other feeling sexually attracted for each other that just appeals to me. I love reading about it, okay? I'm a huge fan of reading about hate sex and hate makeout sessions and kisses and just all of that pining, all this angry pining, you know, it's just, it's something else. And like, even though there isn't sex in this book, there is a hate makeout scene that just fit perfectly with the story and with the tone of the book and with the Fae in general, and it was just... As for Scorpio themes, I feel like the Fae in general are very Scorpio-like, you know, they have Scorpio vibes. I also feel like this whole thing of exploring your darker side and, you know, being in touch with your darker side, as well as moral ambiguity and moral greyness, are very Scorpio themes as well. The scheming, the strategizing, the manipulating as well. What else? I feel like the whole I hate you but I'm also sexually attracted to you thing is very Scorpio as well. And so is Jude's resilience and her getting up no matter how many times she fell. You know, I mean, one of the symbols of the Scorpio sign is the phoenix, you know, and Scorpios are very well known for dying many times in their lives and just getting back stronger in a way. And so I feel like all of that really matches the Scorpio vibe, I guess. And revenge, I mean, hello. Wanting revenge and going after revenge and all that, very Scorpio. So I definitely see some Scorpio sprinkle throughout this entire story. I don't know, man, you know, in a surprising turn of events, I really enjoyed this. I really liked it, and most of it is because of Jude, but I don't care, you know. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and I loved it. I think I'm gonna read The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater now, and then I'll get back to you when I reach 50% of the book. I'm about 50% into The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater, and I am really enjoying this. I have to say I'm not super invested and I'm reading it slower than I normally would, but I'm enjoying it nonetheless. This book seems very familiar, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but like, there's a tone of familiarity to it. You know, it feels like you've known this island your whole life too. Like you're a part of it too, and you too know all these people and this community. And the word that comes to my mind is endearing, you know, this, I don't know if that makes sense, but this book is very endearing to me. I really like the writing, but that doesn't really come as a surprise to me because I know that I really like the way Maggie Stiefvater writes. You know, she's got this very flowery prose that's very beautiful to read, but at the same time isn't too hard to understand. And it's just the right amount of whimsical, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not too much and it's not too little. The plot is intriguing, and I really love the water horses and all the lore surrounding them and this island. And it's very atmospheric too. I really feel like I'm there and I can really picture everything perfectly. And this is more of a personal thing, but The island really reminds me of the town I grew up in. Specifically during the winter though, I grew up in this town called Florianópolis, which is a coastal town in the south of Brazil. And part of the town is in an island and part of the town is in the mainland, you know, in the continent. And the two are connected by a bridge. And it's a lovely town and it's relatively small too, so this book feels quite nostalgic to me. It really gives me the vibes of my childhood, you know. And it also has strong autumn vibes, you know, fall vibes, which makes sense because it takes place during autumn, so. And we have a sprinkle of teenage angst just for good measure, but it's the type of teenage angst that's a bit more grown up and melancholic, which I personally really like. I love the main characters' names. They have such a nice ring to it, Sean Kendrick and Kate Connolly, and I love that people are constantly referring to each other by their full names. I really like the main characters and I think it's very sweet and endearing to see the connection and the affection that each of them has with their respective horses. I love Sean Kendrick and I really like Puck too. Puck is Kate's nickname, but she gets on my nerves every now and then, not gonna lie. She can be a little annoying, but she is a good, consistent character and I can understand where she's coming from. You know what, I think maybe the reason why she annoys me so much is because she reminds me of my teenage self. So there's that. This tripod is really trying to drop my phone. Okay. Kate is the middle child of a recently orphaned family and she has two brothers, and I really like the relationship between them and I can really feel their pain. Because when the book starts, it's been almost a full year since their parents died and the older brother has been quite estranged from the rest of the family. And one day he just comes up to Kate and the younger brother and announces that he's going to move to the mainland, like alone without the two of them. And I can really understand all of them, you know, I can understand why they are feeling the things they are feeling, like Gabe, the older brother. I can understand why he wants to live his own life and leave his past behind, and why he is straining under the weight of having to carry both his younger siblings, you know, and you know, all of the pressure and why he wants to rid himself of it. But I can also understand Puck for resenting him and for not understanding his reasons. But what I can't understand, and this might be considered a spoiler, so just skip until the word disappears from the screen if you mind it, is what the fuck is Gabe on? This motherfucker knew they were gonna lose the house they live in because they were behind on payments, and he was just going to leave without telling his siblings that? What? Oh, but I didn't want to worry you when you just get anxious. Well, yeah, of fucking course they would, because that is a very worrying situation, which is why they should know it. But you know what's even more worrying and anxiety inducing than that, Gabe? Being kicked out of your house out of the fucking blue and not having another place to live in. What is the logic of not telling your siblings they're gonna be evicted? I don't understand. Like, at least let them know before you leave so that they can get stable jobs and another place to live in, maybe? What the fuck? Oh my god. Also, why is Puck so fucking mad at the idea, you know, the thought of her brothers drinking? Not even being drunk, just drinking. Why are you so fucking pressed? It's not that deep. Chill. There's also a character who is a horse buyer, an American horse buyer, and Sean Kendrick works with the horses, like he trains them and cares for them, yada yada. And this guy is so fucking interested in this 19-year-old's life and he's always asking questions and shit, and like, why are you so invested? Like, I understand wanting to help him and I understand being intrigued by him because he is a weird, talented kid. But this guy is way too interested. And not even in a creepy way, just in a very what the fuck way. Like, why? But yeah, all in all, I'm really enjoying it, and I'll get back to you when I finish. This vlog is just gonna be me making a fool of myself, isn't it? I finished reading the Scorpio races and I adored it. This was so fucking beautiful. Oh my god. I cry like a baby at the end of it. The thing about this book is that there is so much hidden under its surface. The summary says that this is about an island that has a specific breed of horse that lives in the sea, and these horses are very murderous and vicious. And then every November the Scorpio races take place, which are basically these races where men ride these murderous horses. And it is about that, but it's also about so much more. This is about growing up and discovering who you really are and becoming your own person and finding out what really matters and what you really want. The romance kind of takes a back seat, but it's still a very important part of the story, and it's so sweet. It's the first teenage crush that came from both the characters feeling intrigued by the other, but then it develops into something else, and the way these characters connected was just so fucking endearing. I love Buck Connolly, I love Sean Kendrick, I love the horses, Dav and Cole. I love everything that's hidden under the surface of the story. The resolution of the conflict between Gabe and Kate was just so beautiful when it really warmed my heart. And I just love the story and its themes and the way it was all resolved. And those last few pages made me sob, like full-on snot out of your nose crying. One thing I didn't mention before was that Park was the first woman ever to ride in the Scorpio races, and she faced a lot of pushback and harassment for it. This was a constant throughout the entire story, and I really liked the way it was explored. And I also really liked seeing how different people from this tiny island that's far away from the rest of the world felt about it and what they did about it, especially the other women in the island. I really liked seeing the entire thing. And I particularly liked the message that yes, there is value and beauty in tradition, but that doesn't mean that everything needs to be so rigid and set in stone. You know, there is room for improvement, there is room to change without having to give up something that's so dear. There's also a theme that I love, which is growing up and having to let go of things or people even though you still love them, and having to reevaluate what is important to you and the space that certain things and people take in your life, and understanding that just because you're letting something or someone go doesn't mean that it's lost forever. In fact, it doesn't mean that it's lost at all, you know? People change, relationships change, feelings change, you know? Doesn't mean that they're gone. Something that I found quite interesting about this is that it doesn't take place in modern time, but it's not really explicit about it. I had a feeling that was the case because of the way characters talked and behaved, and also because there isn't really mentions of most types of technology. And there is this one instance where one of the tourists says that the news of the island take a while to get to the mainland. But it wasn't until the very end that I was sure of it. There's a moment where someone asks Kate about the suffrage movement, and then in the same scene she says there's someone in the beach who has a flashbulb. And I was like, a flashbulb? And that prompted me to Google the name of the Connolly scar, and lo and behold, it's really fucking old. I found a great post on Tumblr that discusses this whole thing at length while trying to determine when exactly this takes place, and I'll link it down below in case anyone's interested. But basically it comes to the conclusion that this probably takes place in the early 30s, and I can definitely see that. As for negatives, there are some questionable comments every now and then. There's one about the appearance of this female character, and there's also quite a few in very poor taste about this blind character, so be aware of that. But other than that, I can't really think of anything else, to be quite honest with you. Okay, Scorpio themes. First of all, there's the obvious one, which is that it literally takes place during Scorpio season. I feel like Sean's relationship with this horse core also has some Scorpio vibes, just because it has an underlying theme of dealing with and embracing and controlling your shadow or your dark side or your inner monster in a way. And angst, so much angst. Those are the ones that I can think at the top of my head. In the end, I just really loved this book and I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I have already started the next book in this vlog, which is Vampire Academy by Richelle Mead, but I think I'm gonna read the Graveyard book at the same time just because my deadline is getting dangerously close, so I haven't made my mind up yet. So I'll come back to update you on whichever book I reached the 50% mark first. So, I have a confession to make. I have already finished reading the Graveyard book by Neil Gaiman. I was gonna update you when I reach 50% of it, just like I did with the other books, but I couldn't stop reading it. Honestly, I couldn't. I just flew through this book without even noticing, and it's got these beautiful illustrations. Let me see if I find one. Like this one and this one too. There are tons of them in the book and they are all very beautiful but also very eerie and spooky. This was so cute and quirky and spooky and just kind of whimsical. And I'm also very surprised with how somber it got, you know, considering that this is a middle grade. Like, it literally opens with a murder. I think this would make an amazing animated series, especially because each chapter kind of has its own story. All of them follow the same characters, but each of them take place in a different moment, you know, a different year in Bod's life. So it's kind of like a collection of short stories following the same characters, but all of them are connected through this overarching plot. This starts with a family being murdered by a man, but the toddler escaped this man while he was busy murdering the rest of the family. But the toddler didn't intend to escape, he just kind of got out of his crib and he saw that the door was open and he walked out because he really liked, you know, walking around and like toddlers do. But the toddler ended up walking into the graveyard and the ghosts of the graveyard decided to take him in order to protect him from that man who murdered his family. And so they raised this little boy, you know, all of the graveyard folk. They raised this little boy and he learns to do ghost things. I honestly don't have a lot to say about this one, but I really loved it and I had a lot of fun reading it. This is so freaking charming and captivating, and there's a quirkiness to the writing that sets the tone for the book really well and that really matches the story. I like the characters, I thought they were all very endearing, but I have to say the ending was a bit too abrupt for my taste. Like, I think we could have used a few more pages just to flesh it out a bit more, because it wasn't that I didn't like the things that happened in the end, it's just that I felt like they could have been a bit more developed, if that makes sense. Okay, Scorpio round. Death, dark spooky things, ghosts, the spiritual realm and the supernatural. Loyalty is a really big thing too. Moral ambiguity maybe? I don't know, maybe that's reaching a little bit, but I feel like it might fit. At the end of the day, I really enjoyed this. It was such a fun time and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This reads like a late 2000s YA in the best way possible. This book is so much fun, but I gotta say, Christian is the only reasonable and sensible character so far. Is that an unpopular opinion? I feel like he might be, but every time he opens his mouth, everyone in the book is horrified and shocked, and I'm just like, well, he's not wrong. I mean, he made several points, okay? That's all I'm gonna say on that. The strongest part of the book so far, at least in my opinion, is Rose and Lisa's friendship. The more the book goes on, the more I understand the relationship and the more complex it becomes, especially when you take into consideration the way this vampire society works. In this vampire society, you basically have 3 groups. You have the Strigoi, the Moroi and the Dhampir. The Moroi are weaker and slower and they are sensitive to sunlight, but they can also use elemental magic, and they have to feed on blood not as often as the Strigoi. The Strigoi are like super vampires. They are faster, they are stronger, but they're also a lot more sensitive to sunlight and they have to drink blood very often. And to become a Strigoi, you have to either be bitten by one, or if you are a Moroi, you have to drink up all of a person's blood, like kill them from drinking all their blood. And in this case, you end up losing your magic, you are no longer able to use it. The Moroi are very good vibes, toxic positivity kind of people when it comes to their magic. You know, they believe it is a gift from nature, and so they can't use it to fight, like they are forbidden, which, like, what's even the point? That's your only strength. And the Dhampir are like the offspring between Moroi and human, and so they are faster and stronger than Moroi, but less than Strigoi. And they don't drink blood at all. The main character is Rose. She's a Dhampir who's the guardian of one of the Moroi princesses, Lisa. And this book starts when the two of them have been living in the human world for 2 years after running away from the academy. We don't really know what they ran away from or what they were trying to escape. And since going around biting random humans who call attention to them, Lisa ends up feeding off of Rose. So every single day Lisa drinks a bit of Rose's blood, which is extremely taboo in the society because the Moroi saliva has chemicals that kind of make you high, you know, it's kind of like a drug. So much so that the Moroi typically have feeders who are basically humans who volunteer to do it because of the high. So they're like pretty much like addicts. And even though the Moroi literally depend on them to survive, they are still very much frowned upon. They are considered less than and filthy and just junkies and all that. And so for this society, for a Dumpir to allow Moroi to drink their blood is just disgusting. Like they call the Dumpir for Jewish blood horse. And Rose knows that and she agrees with that, but she's so fiercely protective of Lisa that she's willing to do it anyway. And I actually find it quite interesting that when the book starts, she makes it clear that she actually enjoys the high that comes from Lisa's fight. But at the same time, she fights it. She doesn't want to give in to it because she doesn't want to be seen as a blood whore. But anyway, so the two of them have this very strong friendship that is founded on love and protectiveness, but is also very codependent. Rose is protective of Lisa to the point where she puts Lisa and her needs and her safety above herself. And it's like her top priority, her only concern. And to the point where she's willing to excuse anything she might do in order to keep Lisa safe. And Lisa quite literally depends on Rose to stay alive. And so there's this very interesting power dynamic because on one hand, Lisa's a royal and Rose is just a guardian. But on the other, Lisa's life is quite literally on Rose's hands. Right now I'm a little over halfway through the book and the dynamics seem to be shifting a bit. At the start of the book, we know that Rose used to be the popular one back when they were in the Vampire Academy. And she's the one who's active and reckless and protects the other. And then they spent 2 years in the human world with Rose still occupying their role. And now they are taken back to the academy. And rumors start going around about Rose. And so Lisa takes on the role of the active protector. You know, she's intent on protecting Rose just as much as Rose is intent on protecting her, which is quite interesting. You know, it's a shift on the dynamic of the relationship. And the two of them have a bond, which is extremely rare, and it allows Rose to feel everything that Lisa's feeling. But also, sometimes when Lisa is feeling things too intensely, it sucks Rose into her head. And so Rose is kind of experiencing everything that Lisa's experiencing, and she sees what Lisa's seeing and all that. And Rose starts using that to her favor, like she starts inducing this moment where she is sucked into Lisa's head in order to spy on Lisa in a way and make sure that she's okay. That's what I meant when I said she would excuse anything that she might do if it was in order to protect Lisa, which I also find quite intriguing. But Lisa is able to compel people and get them to do what she wants, and so she starts compelling people in order to protect Rose. And so we're in this very interesting position where Rose is constantly invading Lisa's privacy, but Lisa is constantly messing with people's free will. And even though we understand why they are doing it, it's still a very morally ambiguous thing at best. I really like the two of them, I really like the conflicts, and I also really like that Rose longs for a normal teenage experience, but that experience could greatly affect her career. But at the same time she longs for that, she also wants to be Lisa's guardian more than anything in the world. And in order to do that, she has to give up that easy life, you know, the normal teenage life. But Rose is also extremely judgmental. She seems to think that her and Lisa are above others and that they have some type of moral high ground. Like, she has this very holier-than-thou attitude that really grinds my fucking gears. Also, up until this point, the only female characters who are okay in her eyes are her and Lisa. Others are too ugly or too vain or too talkative, too this, too that. No girl is good enough, apparently. But she has no problem hanging out with or talking with the guys, so yay. And she comes off as very classist sometimes. There's this Moroi girl who is very mean to her and Lisa and is actively bullying them. And Rose wants revenge on her, which I 100% support, okay? I can get behind that. But the thing is, Rose finds out that this girl's parents work as servants for a Moroi family. And she starts shitting on the girl because of that and spreading it around because she knows that the royals are gonna despise her because she is of a lower class. And she's also quite nasty about it, and she keeps bullying the girl because her mother's a maid. I understand she wanted revenge, but goddamn, you don't have to be classist to go about that, sis. And I find her views on sexuality to be a bit inconsistent. She's very sex positive in the sense that she makes out with whoever she wants, whenever she wants, which I'm all for, and I really love it. But at the same time, she's also weirdly fixated on the fact that she's still a virgin and she doesn't actually sleep around. Like, please stop. I really want to like you, but you're making it difficult right now. And her love interest Dimitri just slut-shamed her, which we hate to see it. As for the writing, there is a lot of info dumps, but I don't really mind it, to be honest, because I find it all quite interesting. Also, sometimes Rose takes way too long to understand things, even though she has all the pieces of the puzzle already. And more than once, I thought that she had understood a situation, only to 50 pages later find out that she actually hasn't. I thought that she put the pieces together at a certain point, only to find out later that she didn't, because she was just now doing it. Does that make sense? I really suck at explaining things, don't I? Anyway, I'm having a blast with this, being completely honest with you, and I'll update you again once I finish it. I finished reading Vampire Academy and I have thoughts. I don't really like having a rating system, like a set of things to judge a book by that I apply to every single book. I don't really think that makes sense, to be honest, because different books have different purposes and different goals. This book was super predictable and the writing was just okay, but the goal of this book is to be entertaining, to be a good time, not to be a literary masterpiece. And it certainly accomplishes that with the added bonus of having amazing characters and a super interesting world as well. Rose grew a lot as a character, and most of the problems that I had with her kind of were resolved by the end. However, there's this point in the book where rumors are spread about Rose being a blood whore and a slut, and the way the book deals with that made me a bit uncomfortable, to be honest with you. Because the implication to me really seemed to be that the problem was that it wasn't true, rather than slut-shaming being wrong, period. Because at no point does she say, what's so wrong about being a blood whore? What if I was a blood whore? That's not your problem. Why is it so wrong that I like being bitten by a moroi? And neither does she say anything like, and so what if I fucked so-and-so? That's my sex life. You don't have any right to intervene with it. What if I did it? No, the focus was all on the fact that it wasn't actually true, you know, it was a lie that someone started and spread around. And I just don't think that should be the focus. Like, yes, there's a problem, but I think the problem is a lot deeper than that. And especially because, and this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear it, just skip a bit. But because at the end, she finds out that this rumor was started by the moroi girl who was bullying them from the beginning. And this moroi girl made this up, and she got two guys to spread a rumor around and say that Rose had sex with them and that she was the blood whore. And the way she got these two guys to agree with spreading this rumor around was by having sex with both of them. And this girl was dating someone at the time too, just to make matters worse. I have a problem with that being a plot point at all, but it's fine. I'm willing to overlook that. And I guess you can all agree that what this girl did was wrong and she had no right to do it. Like, she fucked up big time. But then Rose goes around spreading the truth, which fair enough. And they all start slut-shaming this girl, Rose included. I don't think y'all should be really focusing on that she had sex with both of them part. Surely that's a bit hypocritical, no? Surely you would focus on the fact that she invented a lie just to hurt this girl, or even that she cheated on her boyfriend. But no, it's the part when she had sex with the two of them. Okay, but still, Rose did evolve quite a lot, and she realized most of her mistakes and she tried to be better. My favorite thing about the book, I think, was Lisa and her character arc and her powers and everything that had to do with her. And I really like that her powers actually have consequences, you know, they really take a toll on her. Major trigger warnings for this book for self-harm, more specifically cutting and also depression. Just beware of that. I personally really like the way the book dealt with these issues, and I really like the way it was incorporated in the story and in the lore. But I also know people who didn't really like it, so I guess it's just a matter of opinion at the end of the day, maybe. I also really like how the book ends with the characters starting to question how the society works and the way they view things, especially in regards to the moroi's powers. I like the revelation of what led Lisa and Rose to flee the academy, and I also like the revelation about Rose in the end, which, you know, I'll not go into details here because spoilers, but like, I liked it. I really liked it. Now, I did find the romance between Rose and Dimitri to be a bit iffy, but not for the reason that most people seem to. Because from what I've seen, most people seem to have a problem with their relationship because it's a student-teacher relationship. But I don't really see it as that. Like, he's just a tutor, he's teaching her to fight better, that's all. I don't really think of it as a student-teacher relationship, to be quite honest. What I find to be the iffy part of the relationship is the age gap. A 7-year age gap isn't a big deal when you're both adults, but she is a teenager in high school. She's 17, I think. You know, at least they acknowledged it in the end, and there's only one scene where they actually got physical, and there's a reason for that, so... That being said, I do ship it. Yes, I do understand that it's problematic, but like, it's a fictional couple. It's not that deep. Fiction is a safe space for us to navigate things that we would never want to navigate in real life. I was just pretending that she was Hoda the entire time, to be quite honest, because I actually quite like the way the romance was written. And I do ship them. Oh, and Christian remains the most sensible character, without a doubt. As for Scorpio things, Rose is very sexual, and she's also very resentful. She really holds grudges, and she goes around trying to get revenge on people. And there's also her fierce loyalty to Lisa, of course. All in all, I just had a lot of fun reading Vampire Academy, and I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. That concludes this vlog and this little experiment. I could definitely see some recurring themes, such as more ambiguity, resilience, and being in touch with your inner monster / shadow / darker side / whatever you want to call it. And even looking at things that are typically considered scary or grim through another more understanding lens. That's not to say that Scorpios are the only ones to experience those things, or that these are exclusively Scorpio traits. And it's also not to say that only Scorpios can write about that or think of writing about that, or only Scorpio characters can have that. But those are all very Scorpio things, like all of them have the Scorpio vibe, if that makes sense. As I said in the beginning of the video, astrology is a lot more complex than that. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you all enjoyed watching it too. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this video, and if you've read any of these books, and what did you think of them. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you feel like it, and as always, I'll see you around.